Hello everyone, welcome to another session of BMC's YouTube mainframe channel. My name is Priya Salagundla and I'm a software consultant for BMC. The topic today is preparing for your AMI console management installation. Note that we also have an existing video on this channel that walks you through the installation itself. And today, what we're going to cover here is you have just acquired AMI console management and you and your team will begin installing and configuring in a few weeks. What can you do now to ensure the installation will be as smooth and efficient as possible? So, there are two broad areas that require some thought and some planning. There are preparing your Linux server and determining the ports that you need to be opened in the firewall. When I say preparing your Linux server, you will determine the type of Linux host and requisition it using the outlined specs. And for the ports, tell your security to start working on opening following ports in your firewall and get them started on this early. So let's talk about server. We will cover the basic requirements and the documentation can provide more specifics on this. There are three ways to go when setting up for a hosting server for console management. A standalone server, Linux under VMware, or running on zLinux. For a standalone server, the requirements are as follows. Hardware requirements are one URAC mount case with a single quad-core Xeon 3440 processor, 16 GB of RAM, single enterprise level SATA, 80 GB of free disk space is recommended. When coming to operating systems, it is 64-bit and you need one of the following. Either Red Hat Enterprise Linux 6 or 7, CentOS 6 or 7, or SUSE Linux Enterprise Server 11 or 12. And regarding Java, you need Oracle 8 or newer, or OpenJDK 11 or newer, or IBM Java 8 or newer. So let's talk about VMware. For VMware software and space CPU requirements are similar to a standalone. If you plan to run console management on a virtual machine under VMware, you must consider console management as a real-time application rather than an on-demand software application. Ensure that sufficient memory and CPU resources are available for the console management virtual machine on the ESX or ESXi host. And your third option would be to run on zLinux on mainframe. On zLinux, the resources for operating console management are primarily a function of the number of host consoles and the volume of messages sent to those consoles by the host LPARs. So mainframes are typically highly utilized with constant message traffic. So console management will correspondingly require significant continuous use of CPU and memory with occasional extra CPU demands. The bare minimum of a VM managed Linux image is 1.5 GB of physical memory, 24 MSUs of CPU with up to 72 MSUs available on demand for short periods, which is less than a minute, and 10 GB of DASD. This would be sufficient for a small site with 20 active consoles and 3 operators monitoring consoles using an out-of-the-box rules where an active console is defined as one receiving 25,000 messages an hour, which is approximately 7 messages a second. For each additional consoles, please see the manual for instructions on how you can scale it appropriately. Also note that when requisitioning your Linux server, inform your responsible party during the installation of console management software that you will need root access and a reboot is required. Now, let's talk about port requirements for console management. Linux server spans two networks typically, so two NICs need to talk to a private OSA LAN and the public operator LAN. Here are the list of ports that need to be opened in firewall between the networks. Our customers normally rely on hardware firewalls outside of the console management Linux servers, but it is perfectly fine to use the Linux firewall itself. Here are the port values that you need. Port 22 for SSH access for administration, port 80 for administration and operators, 443 for administration and operators, 6994 for primary API ports, 61617 for active MQ port, 1515 for some advanced authentication scenarios. And you might want 389 or 636 for LDAP authentication. Also, importantly, you need a range of ports to handle your various sessions. For example, client ports for console management servers. They might start at, say, 9100. Client ports for session servers, they might start at 10,000. Note that the client ports are variable ranges, and in a large configuration, this may be dozens or even hundreds of ports. So it may be tedious to configure every individual firewall port. Normally, in this situation, the firewall is configured for port ranges, say 9100 to 9120 and 10,000 to 10,200. When the ports have been successfully opened in the firewall, you will be able to verify a clear IP path from server to the OSA card on the connection port with no firewall blocking traffic to and from, and also verify a clear IP path from the server to the end users and administrators' desktops for a range of ports somewhere in the 3,000 to 30,000 range, or a span of at least 2 ports per console session to be tested should be sufficient. For example, if you have 10 consoles, that is equal to 20 ports that are available. Okay, you have your IT team now working on preparing your Linux server or servers, and security is opening ports in your firewall to enable communication. Well done. Now, when it's time to install and configure AMI console management, you will be ready. So that concludes this session. Feel free to leave comments. And if you like this session, please hit that like button. And if you want to be notified on upcoming events, simply subscribe to this channel. All right, we'll see you in the near future with more YouTube sessions featuring BMC's mainframe products. Signing off. Thank you for joining us. Bye for now.